Why do you find one on you after 10 minutes at the edge of the yard, and never after 2 hours in the middle of the field? Same property, same day, same boots. 10 minutes at the edge, 2 hours in the open. You've noticed it. You've probably never asked it out loud because it sounds like a small question. It isn't. That question has an answer. The answer is about water, and once you have it, you'll know exactly which 3 feet of your property to fix. My name is Hollis Ward. I've worked the same 40 acres of bottom ground for 38 years, and I've pulled ticks off myself and off 2 dogs for every one of them. Last week I told you I'd show you how to make a strip of ground unsurvivable for a tick without spraying an acre. I said 6 feet. The research says 3. I'll tell you where that 3-foot number comes from, why I run mine wider along the heaviest woods anyway, and why 3 is enough for most of you. I'd rather correct myself on camera than have you haul twice the wood chips you need. Stay with me. By the end, you'll know the exact width, the exact depth, what it's made of, what it costs, and the 2 things people believe about ticks that a peer-reviewed study took apart. One of them so thoroughly that the researchers found nothing at all. You already have a ritual. You just don't think of it as one. Boots off at the step, shirt straight into the wash, hands down the back of your own neck, behind the ears, along the belt line. If you've got a dog, you run your thumbs down the inside of both ears and around the collar before he comes in. You do this because of a thing about the size of a poppy seed. That's the one that matters, not the fat one you can see. The nymph, that's the second stage in the tick's life, after the larva and before the adult, is roughly the size of a poppy seed, sometimes flat as a freckle, and it's the stage that infects the most people, because you don't find it. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't itch going in. The CDC estimates about 476,000 Americans are diagnosed and treated for Lyme disease every year. 476,000. And here's what I want you to sit with. If you live where these are, you have almost certainly carried a nymph around on you at some point and never known it. Now back to the question I opened with. You are not picking them up out in the pasture. You are not picking them up on the mowed lawn. You are picking them up in a narrow band, the place where the mowed ground quits and the brush starts. That band has a name. It's called an ecotone. An ecotone is just the seam where 2 kinds of habitat meet, woods and lawn, pasture and fence row, yard and brush pile. Tick people care about roughly the first 20 feet into the wood line, and that band is where every life stage of the black-legged tick tends to be found. Think about how much time you actually spend in it. You walk it to the wood pile. You walk it to the gate. You walk it to run the trimmer along the fence, and when you trim, you're bent over in it, at their exact height, brushing every stem. You have crossed that band 1,000 times. Every one of those crossings was an audition. And this is the part that makes the whole thing manageable, if you'll hear it. Their world is small. That seam is a few feet wide. It runs where your lawn ends. You are not fighting a woods. You are fighting a line. Here's the mechanism. And it's the reason any of this works. A tick does not drink. Between blood meals, it has no way to take a swallow of water. What it does instead is pull water vapor straight out of humid air through a gland in its mouthparts and reabsorb it. That only works above a certain humidity. Entomologists call it the critical equilibrium humidity, the moisture line above which the animal can pull water in and below which it can only lose it. For these ticks, it sits somewhere around 80 to 85% relative humidity. Above that line, it's topping itself off from the air. Below it, the clock is running, and there's nothing it can do. Now here are the actual numbers from a study by Kirby Stafford at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, published in the Journal of Medical Entomology in 1994. He held immature black-legged ticks at fixed humidities and measured how long it took half of them to die. At 100% humidity, 67 days. At 85%, 8 days. At 75%, 1.3 days. Read that gap again. 85%, 8 days. 75%, a day and a third. 10 points of humidity is the difference between a week and an afternoon. That's the whole thing. That is the entire secret, and it has nothing to do with poison. The leaf litter along your wood's edge is a damp sponge. Under it, it's near saturated, all day, even in August. 3 feet away, out on your sunny mowed grass, The air at ground level is dry and hot and moving. Same yard, two different planets. And the tick can only live on one of them, which is the same reason a wet dish rag left on the counter is stiff by noon, and one left balled up in the sink is still sour 3 days later. Spread it out, move air over it, and it's finished. It isn't a mystery, it's evaporation, and it kills things that can't drink. A tick doesn't hunt you, it has no interest in chasing anything. What it does is called questing. It climbs a grass stem or a low leaf, hooks on with its back legs, and holds its front legs out in the air. And it waits. Days, weeks. For a leg, a boot, a dog's ear. That's why the fence row gets you, and the open field doesn't. Questing requires something to climb. Mowed turf gives it nothing to climb, and no humidity to climb back down into. And it needs one more thing: traffic, blood. That comes from mice and other small rodents living in the leaf litter and the brush pile and the rock wall, and from deer moving the adults around the property, which puts three things in the exact same 6 feet of ground: the humidity, the ladder, and the blood supply. That's not a coincidence you have to solve. That's a target. Now let me take 2 things away from you, and I'm sorry about the first one: the opossum. You've seen the meme. Possums eat 5,000 ticks a season. Love your possum. He's the unpaid help. That number traces back to a 2009 study on captive animals, where the researchers put ticks on the animals, counted what came off, and extrapolated. In 2021, Cecilia Hennessy and Caitlin Hild at Eureka College in Illinois went and checked it against the real world. They dissected the stomachs of 32 wild opossums and searched the contents for ticks and tick parts. It was published in the journal Ticks and Tick-Borne Diseases. They found 0, not a low number, 0. No ticks, no tick parts in any of the 32. They also went back through 23 prior papers on opossum diet and couldn't find support for it there either. Possums are fine animals. Leave them be. They are not your tick control. Second one, and this one costs money: tick tubes. The cardboard tubes packed with permethrin-treated cotton. The idea being mice take the cotton for nesting, and the treatment kills the ticks on the mice. Sound theory. Kirby Stafford, the same man from the humidity study, ran it in the field in southeastern Connecticut across 3 years. The ticks on the mice went down, substantially. But the number of host-seeking ticks, the ones actually waiting to get on you, did not come down significantly compared to untreated sites. So here's the honest version of who profits. Because I'm not going to tell you there's a cover-up. Nobody suppressed anything. The problem is that no one on earth can sell you 3 feet of wood chips at a margin. There's no route in it, no subscription, no monthly visit. So it doesn't get advertised. And what does get advertised is the thing with a product attached. The seasonal acaricide plan, which is a tick pesticide, at $300 to $600 a season. And the tube kits, and the memes that cost nothing to share and happen to be wrong. The best supported thing you can do to that seam is labor. Free labor. And free labor has no marketing budget. If you've got a stretch of edge on your place and you've tried something on it, chips, gravel, mowing it back, spraying it, guineas, anything, tell me in the comments what actually changed and what didn't, especially if it didn't. That's more useful to the next person than another success story. Here's the specification, and now you know why every number in it is what it is. The CDC's guidance is a 3-foot-wide barrier of wood chips or gravel between your lawn and any wooded or brushy area. 3 feet wide and at least 3 inches deep. 3 feet because that's a crossing the animal can't survive at 75% humidity in the sun. 3 inches deep because anything thinner lets the leaf litter and the damp come right back through by the second season. And this isn't just guidance on a page anymore. In April of 2026, a team out of the University of Ottawa published a 2-year field trial in the journal Ticks and Tick-Borne Diseases. They took 20 50-meter trail segments in Ottawa's Greenbelt, laid ash wood chip borders about 1 meter wide and 2 inches deep along the trail edges, and dragged for ticks weekly through June and July across 2 seasons. Plain, untreated wood chips cut blacklegged tick density by 48% against the untreated controls. Chips treated with deltamethrin, which is an acaricide, cut it by 99%. And this is the number that ought to hold your attention. Of the ticks they collected and tested, 34.5% were carrying the Lyme bacterium, 1 in 3. 48% from plain chips, no chemical, just dry ground where damp ground used to be. Now, why do I run mine wider than 3 in places? Because along my north line the woods are heavy and the ground stays wet late, and I'd rather overbuild the 2 or 3 worse stretches than do the whole line twice. That's my preference on my ground, not what the study says. The study says 3 feet works. If you do 3 feet, you've done the thing.
Cost. If you buy bagged mulch, it's a few dollars a bag, and it adds up fast. Don't. Call a tree service and ask for a chip drop. They pay to dump chips, so most will give you a truckload free and be glad of it. Same with municipal yard waste piles. A lot of counties give chips away by the scoop. Pea gravel works too and lasts longer, but you'll pay for it, and you'll never get a shovel through it again. One warning on material: use dry, coarse chips or gravel. Do not use damp, shredded bark mulch, the fine, dark stuff that mats down. That holds moisture. You'd be building them a better house. Walk the line first and mark it. Not the whole property. The stretches you actually cross, the path to the woodpile, the gate, the back of the yard where the kids and the dog go, the run along the garden fence. Rake the leaf litter back out of that strip and into the woods, away from the lawn. This step does more than you'd think. You're removing the moisture, the questing cover, and the mouse habitat in one pass. One rake, 3 problems. Cut the brush and tall grass back on the lawn side of the line so sun and wind actually reach the strip. A shaded barrier is a damp barrier, and a damp barrier is not a barrier. Lay the chips 3 feet wide and 3 inches deep, right on the seam. Don't edge it with landscape timbers or anything that traps water underneath. Move what sits near the edge, firewood off the ground and away from the house. The swing set, the picnic table, the dog run, out into the open sun, not tucked under the trees at the yard's edge. Sunny and mowed is the safe part of your property. Use it. Then keep the lawn side mowed short and keep leaves off it. That's the maintenance. Top the strip up when it thins, which is about every 2nd or 3rd year. Fine shredded bark instead of coarse chips. Holds water. You've built habitat. 2 inches deep because you ran short. It mats and greens over in a season, and you'll do it twice. Putting it in the shade under a heavy canopy and expecting the same result. Dry is the active ingredient. No sun, no dry. Raking the leaves onto the lawn side instead of into the woods. Now the damp is on the side you walk. Doing the whole perimeter and quitting halfway. Do the 50 feet you actually cross, all the way, properly. That beats 300 feet done thin. Leaving the wood pile stacked against the house on bare ground. That's a mouse hotel with a heated wall, and the mice are the blood supply. And the one that undoes everything, skipping the boots. More on that right now. 48% is not 100%. A barrier lowers the odds on the ground you crossed. It does nothing for the tick you pick up in the actual woods, in the hayfield edge, or off the dog. So here's the honest ranking. And it isn't the barrier. The single best evidence protection for your body is treated clothing. 0.5% permethrin, sprayed on boots, socks, and pant legs, dried before wearing, good for around 6 weeks or 6 washings. In a University of Rhode Island study from 2017, people wearing permethrin-treated shoes and socks were dramatically less likely to be bitten. The figure the manufacturers cite from it is roughly 73 times less likely. A bottle runs about $15 to $20 and treats several outfits. Spray the boots. Not your skin. Permethrin goes on fabric, and it needs to dry before you put it on. That is not a small footnote. That's the actual answer for your body, while the barrier handles your ground. And the medical part is not my lane. Lyme disease was worked out starting in 1975, when 2 mothers in Lyme, Connecticut, Polly Murray and Judith Mensch, called the state health department about a cluster of children with what looked like juvenile arthritis. Yale sent Alan Steer and Stephen Malawista, and their survey of Lyme, Old Lyme, and East Haddam turned up 51 cases. That's how the thing got its name. If you find one attached, or you get a rash or a summer fever you can't explain, that's a conversation with your doctor. And today. Not with me, and not with the comments. One job. Saturday. Pick the single stretch of edge you cross most, the path to the woodpile,
or the back line where the dog and the kids go. 50 feet is plenty. Mark it. Rake the leaf litter out of it, into the woods, away from the lawn. Then lay wood chips 3 feet wide and 3 inches deep along it.
Call a tree service Friday and ask if they've got a chip drop in your area. Most will give you a load for nothing rather than pay the dump fee. If nobody's working near you, bagged chips or pea gravel from the farm store will cover 50 feet for well under $100. Half a day of work, maybe free, probably permanent. And before you start, this part takes 4 minutes, spray your boots and socks with 0.5% permethrin and hang them to dry while you get the tools out. Next week, the woodpile. How to stack it so it doesn't turn into a mouse hotel. Because the mouse is the part of this nobody talks about, and the mouse is where the tick actually gets what it's carrying. Same idea as this one. You don't fight the animal. You take away the one thing it can't live without. Your grandfather kept a bare strip along the fence row, and he'd have told you it was for fire, or for the mower, or because that's how it was done. He was right for reasons he was never told. An animal that can't drink can't cross 3 feet of hot, dry ground. Rake the leaves back, lay the chips, let them walk into the desert.